Our reading this morning is from the book of Matthew, chapter 25, verses 1 through 13. At that time, the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 young bridesmaids who took their lamps and went out to meet the groom. Now 5 of them were wise, and the other 5 were foolish. The foolish ones took their lamps but didn't bring oil for them. But the wise ones took their lamps and also brought containers of oil. When the groom was late in coming, they all became drowsy and went to sleep. But at midnight there was a cry, "Look, the groom, come out to meet him." Then all those bridesmaids got up and prepared their lamps. But the foolish bridesmaids said to the wise ones, "Give us some of your oil, because our lamps have gone out." But the wise bridesmaids replied, "No, because if we share with you, there won't be enough for our lamps and yours. We have a better idea. You go to those who sell oil and buy some for yourselves." But while they were gone to buy oil, the groom came. Those who were ready went with him into the wedding. Then the door was shut. Later, the other bridesmaids came out and said, "Lord, Lord, open the door for us." But he replied, "I tell you the truth, I don't know you. Therefore, keep alert, because you don't know the day or the hour." This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Will you join me in prayer? God, we come to you today in a world which is weary. A world which is weary and tired and unable to see the end of night. And we ask that as we come to this place, we can lay that darkness in front of you and that we can begin to see the light, your light, and that we allow it to fill us up and send us out. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable to you, O Lord, our God. Amen. So I grew up with a version of this parable that was very similar to the one that Miss Rebecca just shared. It was my grandfather's favorite parable and was read at his funeral, which is totally normal. And it goes like this, that the bridesmaids were waiting for the bridegroom to come, and half of them had enough oil for the night because they were diligent and thoughtful and well-stocked due to hard work, while the other half were lazy and unprepared and had slept through the night instead. And when the bridegroom appeared, he took the hardworking, dedicated women into the room with him, and the lazy ones were cast out into the darkness with the wedding guest from last week who wasn't dressed properly. Now, I'm all for the Protestant work ethic. Scriptures have a lot of stories and parables which remind us that God expects us to respond in gratitude by doing good works. Jesus tells us about 300 times to care for the poor and to restore sight to the blind and to release the captives. And Paul's letters are even more clear. God expects you to work hard for God because you are aware of the gift of grace. In many ways, the Protestant work ethic is the backbone of the American economy. We work hard, and then we play hard, and then we get back up in the morning, and we do all of that again. And maybe that's why we drink more coffee per capita than every other country in the planet. All this hard work is exhausting. So I'm all for the idea that God expects us to be caught working like the thief in the night who was caught unexpectedly by the owner of the house. I just don't think this parable is about good works or about the Protestant work ethic. I think that this parable is about desperation and in the darkness of a long night where it doesn't feel like God has anything to say. I think this parable is about those nights when we cry out and the bridegroom doesn't seem to appear. I think it's about longing and hoping for light, and the darkness just keeps continuing. It wasn't supposed to be this way, because both sets of women fell asleep. Everyone in the room that night before expected the same thing, for the morning to come at the prescribed time. And I don't know about you, or how long it takes for you to adjust to daylight savings time, but I am still struggling about what time I'm supposed to be going to bed at night. Time is not predictable. We all expect the sun to come up in the morning. In today's story, for whatever reason, the bridegroom does not appear at the appointed hour. The women all fell asleep, and when they woke up, everyone was upset because the groom was not where he was supposed to be. Was this a runaway bride situation? Was the groom going to come after all? He was supposed to be here like 3 hours ago, and now he isn't, and you can just imagine the hullabaloo that was happening in that room. But both sets of women fell asleep. Both sets. Both were prepared for the night with enough oil to last the night if the groom had shown up when he was supposed to. It's a pretty thinly veiled metaphor Jesus lays down here in this parable. You see, it's the second of 4 parables about the return of Jesus after his crucifixion, which has not happened yet. It is a warning about what is to come. Before they go through this night, Jesus says, I promise to return, to rise again, to send a helper, to never leave you alone. Jesus is reminding them of all those promises, but also warning them that those promises will not be fulfilled in the way that they expect. I will return, Jesus says, but it's not going to be on your schedule or in the way you anticipate, which is the most frustrating thing about God. God never does anything on our schedule. God does not respect a timetable or do things the way we expect or in the way we planned or in the timing we'd like. You see, we are prepared and equipped for God to act within our framework and expectations for how and when God is supposed to act. But the night is always longer than we expect. If the night had lasted the regular 8 hours like the women expected, everyone would have been ready. They would have had plenty of oil. Everyone had enough oil to last until the expected hour. And so the only difference between the 2 groups is one group had more oil than they needed for the night. The second set of women had brought with them more than enough, several days' worth of oil. They were expecting God to be delayed. They anticipated that the night might be longer than they hoped it would be. The night always lasts longer. So this, to me, is a parable about resilience. Resilience is the ability to make it through a trauma or a stressful event or a time in our lives that is hard and come out on the other side of it whole and healthy. In essence, it's our ability to have enough oil to last not just for the night, but for the days and weeks to come after a life-changing event. There are moments and days and years of night as part of a normal life. We will all experience times in our lives when our problems seem overwhelming, where our own strength and skills do not feel like enough to get us through to the next day. We have stress in the form of jobs and school and tests and relationships and loss and grief and honest to God trauma. And all of these events can plunge us into a time of night. Life is full of these kinds of moments of stress and loss and fear. And we do not know which group we will be in until the sun goes down. Will we have enough oil? One of the unfortunate truths about resilience is that it is a learned skill. It's something we can practice and build up. Resilience is a skill we can teach our children and an intentional set of practices. And unfortunately, if you had experienced encountering and overcoming obstacles and coming out whole on the other side, then the next time you experience it, you are more resilient. You will be able to get to the other side. The first time someone told me to my face that they didn't believe in women ministers, I went home and cried. Well, I didn't go home because I went to school because I have a 7:30 class on the theology of Howard Thurman. And I loved this class. I was a chaplain at the hospital, and my job was to go room to room asking how patients were doing and if I could pray for them, which seems pretty innocuous. And I stopped by the room of a female patient who had heart surgery. And I did my little speech. Hi, I'm Liz. I'm the chaplain. I'm just here to see how you're doing and if there's anything we can pray about today. And the man was standing by the door, and there was a group of women, maybe 3 or 4, standing in the back of the room. And I remember him as like giant and huge, and that the women in the back were sort of scared and huddled, but that may just be me remembering the situation that way. In response to my offer to pray with them, he literally said, "We don't believe in women ministers," and slammed the door in my face. And so I cried the whole hour back to the seminary, and I guess I showed up to my class obviously upset. I loved this class. Howard Thurman was a black theologian in the 40s and 50s, and he wrote about how to live a life of faith in the face of oppression. His most famous book is called Jesus and the Disinherited. The class was a window into a world that I hadn't experienced. Anyway, I walked in, and my friend D'Amico walked over to me and grabbed my hand and said, "Are you okay?" And I sort of nodded, and he looked at me again, and he said, "No, really, are you okay?" I mean, clearly I wasn't okay, so I sort of spilled the story to him, and he looked at me, and suddenly he was 1,000 years old. And he said, "Girl, you're going to have to grow some thick skin." And everyone who was sitting next to me in the class just started nodding. I was maybe 24, and this was the first time in my life someone had told me that I couldn't do something because I was a girl. It would not be the last time. My daughter is on a righteous crusade at the moment against the unfair double standard that boys are allowed to not wear shirts in public. Which is, I mean, fair, right? And I pray every time she says this isn't fair, that this is the worst double standard that she will face in the world. But I know it's not going to be. I know something that she doesn't know. D'Amico had spent his whole life being told no, or that he couldn't do something because he was black. And he knew something that I didn't know. "Girl," he said, "you're going to have to put on your thick skin." And that sentence changed my life. It did. It started me trimming my lamp and tending to my wick. And beginning that day, I started to build resilience. I knew if God was calling me into this life of ministry, I had to be aware that there were going to be people, some of them in my own family, who wouldn't accept my calling because of the arrangement of my anatomy. And it has taken time and many more years of experiences and encounters with other people's biases and hatreds. But the last time somebody told me they didn't believe in women ministers, I said, "You don't have to believe in me. I am not a unicorn." I've grown thick skin. Resilience is the ability to live through the dark night and come out on the other side. It is something many of our black brothers and sisters developed a long time ago. We heard today a Negro spiritual, and I want to share a little bit about those with you. The Negro spiritual was developed as a field song, and so slaves who were working in the fields picking cotton or harvesting tobacco would sing these field songs. The first enslaved person arrived in North America sometime in 1619, and the last people to receive news of their freedom heard the news on June 19th, 1865. So over the course of almost 250 years, women, men, and children worked the fields and sung songs. These songs were songs that taught their children resilience. The spirituals are intentionally repetitive because that made them easier to sing and to remember and to hear across the fields. Can you imagine what that must have been like? And they mixed biblical imagery with experiences that they had, the dark nights that they knew as their lives. And those songs are hope. They're meant to be hope. And it reminded these people who had no light, no possibility of a life of their choosing, that there was hope. the night would not last forever. And we know a lot of these songs by heart. The whole world is in God's hands, or Michael row the boat ashore, or swing low, sweet chariot. As I went down to the river to pray, were you there when they crucified my Lord? This train is bound for glory. They make up the fabrics of our lives, and some of them are unfamiliar to us, but all of them have the same theme. The night will last longer than you think. The night will last longer than you think. The river is deeper and wider than you thought. The walk down to the river is harder than you'd hope. The boat is taking longer to arrive than what you'd planned. Our brothers and sisters know something we don't. The resilience of faith is a learned skill. It's passed down from generation to generation and neighbor to neighbor. And when we share our stories of the night, when we walk with others who have different stories to share, as we journey along the road, our resilience gets bigger. We last a little bit longer. We get a little bit stronger. We have a little bit thicker skin. And the truth is, all of us have experienced dark nights and deep ravines. And God has brought us out on the other side. We all have stories to tell of a night that lasted longer than we'd hoped, but of a light which eventually came. We all have things we know that other people don't. And those stories are the oils for our lamp. We can learn. We can sing songs about hope in the midst of darkness, and we can be reminded that we need to trim our own lamps. We ended this every week we ended this class with a different spiritual, and there was one that we learned, which is called "He Never Failed Me Yet." It's a great song, and it goes like this: I will sing of God's mercy every day, every hour. God gives me power. I will sing and give thanks to me for all the dangers, toils, and snares that He has brought me out. He is my God, and I'll serve Him. No matter what the test, trust and never doubt. Jesus will surely bring you out. He's never failed me yet. So I'm going to teach it to you. You ready? We're just going to learn the chorus, and it goes, no matter what the test, trust and never doubt. Jesus will surely bring you out. He never failed me yet.
He never failed me yet.
No matter what the test,
No matter what the test,
trust and never doubt.
trust and never doubt.
Jesus will surely bring you out.
Jesus will surely bring you out.
He never failed me yet.
He never failed me
Let's
yet.
try it all together. You ready? No matter what the test, No matter what the test, trust and never doubt. Jesus will surely bring you out. He never failed me yet. One more time. No matter what the test, trust and never doubt. Jesus will surely bring you out. He never failed me yet. He never failed you yet. And it's not going to happen in the future. And the night will be longer than you expect. But borrowing those stories and filling up our lamps and singing that song will remind us, He never failed me yet. Amen.